first of all, welcome everybody. I see a lot of wonderful familiar faces, and it's so great to see you. I am going to just say a few words. I'm Jeannie Greenberg-Rowatin, one of the partners of LGDR. And this is a very special panel because it actually links two exhibitions that we have at the same time, Rear View, which you have all seen here, and as well Marilyn Minter's show that is uptown on 89th Street. And when thinking about Marilyn Minter and Jenna Gribbon, one of the things that binds them is that they both have been using muses. And this show very much is about the muse. And Jenna's great muse is here, Mackenzie. Thank you for being here. And Marilyn has just made a body of work where she has used many muses, activists who she respects and admires, and they have become her muses in making the new body of work of portraits and odalisques at the gallery. I want to particularly welcome Cecilia Alemani to the gallery and for being here and for acting as our moderator and for keeping this conversation going. You always are so thoughtful, and we really appreciate you being here, so thank you so much. So on to the panel.
Thank you for the lovely introduction, and thank you so much for having us over here. I'm not sure this microphone is working. I'm very excited to be in the company of two wonderful, great artists, and also to be in this incredible setting, this wonderful show, trans-historical show that looks at representations of the human figure from behind. And so today I have a lot of questions to ask to our artists, and then we leave a little bit of space towards the end for your own questions. But I want to touch upon themes and issues that relate to the gaze, to intimacy, to obsession and eroticism. So hang with us. I want to start first by talking about intimacy. There is a lot of intimacy in all of your works, and when I think about intimacy, I think both as the sort of condition that you create in your own studio between you and your subjects or your characters, and also in the content of your paintings. So maybe starting with Marilyn, can you talk about the relationship that you establish with your subjects and the people you portray?
That's easy. When I don't know the sitter, or if it's somebody I'm like admire, like Roxane Gay, I didn't know her at all, and I just if you saw my show, if you read Roxane Gay, she's a little cynical, right? And she wrote one of her books is Bad Feminism. Have you ever read it, Bad Feminist? I love that book because I'm a bad feminist. So I was just, trying to make her comfortable because I could tell right away, I could tell through the lens that when someone is feeling uncomfortable or that they hurt, they're in a bad place, their shoulders starting to shake or something. So they're really nervous too. And if I get makeup artists and hair in there and they feel comfortable, they start to relax, and they don't know I can see them through the steam in the glass. So it's tricky because I can see them, they can't see me. So I didn't tell you this, but I get them all the time when they don't know I'm looking. And that's what I'm looking for, because so many people are so used to posing. The people I shoot. And so they have this prescribed pose, or many of them, like in someone like Lady Gaga. But there's moments when they just take off the mask, and I look for that. So with Roxane, I got her side eye. And can you hear me? Is this working? So I just want them to be comfortable. I talk to them the whole time. And then my husband does too, because he could be really charming. And he can make people laugh, and he'll talk to them, and between us, and then there's so much action going on, and no one is used to the way we shoot, because I'm not a professional photographer. I'm a painter, and I don't know really how to take pictures other than the ones I take. So I'm working with steam and glass. It's very fast. Like we got about 8 seconds, 6 seconds before the steam disappears, and they're not used to this free flow. Nobody ever is, and so they've never posed for anything like this. So they start getting comfortable, and then I look for those magic moments, and that's my trick.
Can you talk a little bit more about your community, or how do you choose your subjects? Of course, your current show is full of friends and artists, but also celebrities and activists. Walk us through how you get to these people.
Thank you. I actually thought about all the tropes of art history, and I was thinking of, women bathers, which I tackled, and odalisques, which we both tackle, and you do women bathers also. But I was thinking, well, there aren't a lot. I mean, Amy Sherrard is not really a portrait painter, but I was thinking, are there any women portrait painters? And I wanted to see if I could make a look of what I wanted to do is make a good painting. That was number one. I've studied portraits my whole life. I'm a voracious museum goer. And I thought, can I create a style to take portraits? Because everybody seems to have their own. The ones that are known as portrait painters have a signature style. And I thought, well, let's see if I could create that. So everybody I wanted to paint people I admire, because I have to get to know them while I'm painting them. And when I'm painting them, it's really the exploration of first of all the things I've ever learned about how to make a painting. And secondly, I was looking for a likeness. But I was more interested, and you are too probably, more interested in making a good painting. And then if the likeness comes through, then I'm really happy. And so I wanted to start this signature, and I want to keep doing them. And everybody I worked with is somebody I really admire. Either they changed art history, or they're in the process of moving the dial on whatever field they're in.
And do you go back to the same people over and over again?
Well, some people were really easy to shoot. Like with Micheline Thomas, I could do 5 paintings of her just from that one session. Some people almost killed me. Like,
We won't ask who.
I'll tell you, I don't have any trouble. Gloria Steinem.
Yeah.
Because she's such an icon for my generation, she was that. And so everybody else, I distort them to make it an interesting portrait. And I just couldn't distort her for some reason. And she was so boring. She wears no makeup. And the only thing interesting were her eyeglasses. And I asked her to wear a ring, and she wore a scarf so I'd have some color, because I'm really mostly interested in making a good painting. And so I had to paint her over and over and over.
And Jenna, in your work there is a very subtle and delicate tension between intimacy and also exhibitionism, between the personal and the collective. How do you navigate this tension in your work and in your practice in general?
Yeah, so I guess particularly in relation to the paintings that are here in this show, they kind of bring the artifice of a spotlight into a domestic space, kind of cluing you into the idea that this is not maybe a naturally occurring moment, I guess. So I'm interested in, first of all, painting my wife over and over again, to try to describe the feeling and the experience of what it is to try to see another person, in especially someone that you're intimate with and someone that you see all the time, and the sort of like shifting reality of another person's, presence or being and in relation to yourself. But also, I'm interested in what we present about ourselves these days, like through social media, for example, that about our intimate lives, in this way that we sort of give the idea to the outside world that they can know something about us and about our intimate selves, our intimate relationships. And I'm kind of like, I guess, asking people to question what they really know about someone else's intimate life versus what they think they know. So I have a couple of different strategies, and my tiny paintings tend to be more kind of documentary paintings where I capture her, or sometimes my son is in the paintings too. And they have a voyeuristic quality because they're kind of these stolen moments where, you know, she might not know that she's in the painting, whereas the medium or larger format paintings tend to be more performative, and I try to make it really obvious that she's a performer in the painting. And that's when you see like clamp lights or spotlights, like really dramatically lit scenes. And she is a performer, she's a musician, so there's that aspect of it too. Like I try to make it very obvious that she's in on the production of the image, and really show the seams of the way the narrative is being constructed, so that you know that you're looking at an artificially, you know, produced moment versus the small ones where it is kind of, they are actually truly more intimate, and the scale kind of plays into that also.
Well, that's a nice comment that leads me to the next question. I think we see clearly here, but in general, art history has taught us that men usually paint women because they want to possess them, they want to own them. Do you think that painting is a form of possession, or is there a sense of ownership in the act of looking? And it's a question for both of you, of course.
I mean, for me, it's not really possession. It's more, it's more an act of recording, you know, recording experience. I think that like paint application is about conveying an experience, a relationship to a moment that becomes an object that you can revisit. And yeah, I
agree. I think I never think in terms of possession ever. I just think of it's a portrait, which is a real. All of them are portraits in your case. But if you're a painter, all I care about is the look of the painting, and every brushstroke of art history is. I mean, all of art history is behind every brushstroke. So the idea of possessing just never even occurs to me. It's really about making a good painting, and I want to possess painting.
But also for me, it's not just about conveying her, but it's about conveying my own experience as a woman in a woman's body in the world, and knowing what it is to be depicted or seen, looked at in the world, and trying to paint about that, the experience that I've had being the subject. So really exploring the idea of subjecthood and trying to have like, help the viewer have an empathetic relationship to the subject, sometimes by conveying how uncomfortable it is to be the subject. So if you're in this like bright spotlight, the light's shining, a lot of times you'll see her like shielding herself, or sometimes she's shielding her, you know, her body from parts she doesn't want us to see, or she's in the discomfort of a blinding light. And that for me is about talking about my own experience of being a woman and being portrayed, being depicted. And so it's really not just about like possessing a subject, it's about the feeling of what it is to be the subject.
And also empowering your subject, not thinking how as women, like women subjects have always been objects of desire, and in both your works, you're clearly empowering the subject. So is that something that you think about in your work, Marilyn, like issues of empowerment and celebration, of course?
I really, I like the idea of taking what we know in art history and making it 21st century, which is my case. If I have a shower, They didn't have showers. When all of our history, you don't see it. So I was able to use the steam in the glass. And I was, but I also, I asked the question to myself, is there a female gaze? I know you do too, we all do. And I'm thinking, well, don't women like to look at other women? I love to, naked or, yeah. I mean, is that a male gaze? I mean, I love to look at good-looking or even ugly people if they're painted beautifully. All I care about is how you paint somebody. And we live in this digital age, and just the pure act of painting, people don't even know how hard it is to do and how many layers we have to do. And it's like, but I get so much pleasure out of creating flesh. Sure. So,
do you ever think of the male gaze, or do you have an ideal audience when you paint? Or?
Me, I'm the ideal audience.
Okay.
Yeah. Every square inch has to be just the way I want it, or I can't let it out of the studio. You too?
Yeah, I mean, I try not to think about the male gaze, honestly. I try not to think about men at all.
I look at this audience.
Me either.
Yeah,
me either.
But do you think of the viewer as you paint? Do you think of who is going to...
Yeah, I think a lot about the triangulation between the viewer and myself and the subject, and how we're all in relation to each other, and how it's like a very active, complex, triangulation that we establish as artists. And I think about what I want from the viewer, and what I want from the viewer in the case of paintings of my wife is like for them to understand something a little bit more about subjecthood, about what it feels like to be the subject. I mean, there are other things too in terms of queerness and relationships and what that kind of desire might even look like, because it's been so rarely portrayed in the history of painting. So that's an aspect of it also. But yeah, think about the viewer.
Both your works are very often erotic and explicit. We have great examples in the show. What is your relationship with that? Where do you ever draw a line? And how far do you go?
I don't paint genitalia. Because I don't think it looks that good unless you paint it. I mean, no, personally, when I did all the, I think you're talking about the bush paintings. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I had to make because I have a very good friend named Betty Tompkins who paints fucking the genitalia up close. Mm-hmm. So she owns that. And I thought, I could go near it, she owns that. But no one's painting pubic hair. And mine are just strictly, I want to make them beautiful pubic hair, so beautiful that these paintings of pubic hair, you put them over your couch, and nobody's going to bat an eye. And I've made a lot of them, and no one goes near them. No one buys them. I have them all.
Genius, nothing to say.
You have too, and we just sold one for the first.
Is that right? First time?
Wow. First time.
When did you make the first one?
10 years ago.
Oh my gosh.
And someday I'm going to put them all together in a room. And I think they're so beautiful. I worked so hard on them, and you'll see, but I don't think we're ready yet. Because this is the first one that's ever sold in 10 years, except for one other one that if you wouldn't know what it was. It was so obscure. Yeah. But I just want to finish that thought. The minute genitalia comes in, it becomes another painting. And that's your territory, and that's Betty's territory, and that's other artists all through, other than who did the Origin of the World?
Courbet.
Yeah. Courbet. Yeah. And that's I like boobs a lot though. Yeah, boobs, shoulders, backs, butts. Yeah.
They're fun to paint.
They're really fun to paint. Yeah. So erotica. I'm never thinking in terms of I want to make a sexy painting. And if I use, this is what I think of. I mean, if you're talking about the present, But back in the 80s, when I made hardcore porn paintings, I was just trying to own, I was asking the question, does the meaning change if a woman paints hardcore? Can I own the agency? And the most important thing is I knew that nobody has politically correct fantasies. And I thought, that's really important. And isn't it time for women to make images for their own pleasure and amusement? And it was right at this nascent area, the pro-sex feminist, and everybody I knew thought like me. And we didn't have the internet. And I thought everyone thought like me, and it's time, I like Susie Bright and Carol, what was her name? Pleasure and Danger. I was talking to somebody who knows this period well. And even Andrew Ross at NYU was writing about sex workers, and I'm going to make it quick. I was wrong. Everybody hated those paintings. And I got kicked out of the art world, basically. I got canceled.
Do you still have them?
Most of them. I have a lot of them, but one person bought a lot of them. Yeah.
Everybody's looking at her. And what about you, Jenna?
Can I ask a question actually about that? How are you navigating the internet in terms of censorship now with those works? Or how are you navigating social
Well, I don't even, when I was making that work, I only had magazines. There was no internet.
No, I mean, today, are you able to share any of that on social media? Or what is like the Instagram? I post on Instagram, and I've had things taken down, but then I put on a censorship panel on Instagram, that was in the Facebook. Yeah, and because of that, they don't take me down anymore. I got tagged or something.
What about you, Jenna?
Yeah, so I think that I don't remember exactly what your question is. It's
Sort of if you ever think about category of the erotic.
right. Yes. So some of my paintings are very erotic, but a lot of them aren't erotic at all. And I think it's just the nature of depicting my romantic relationship that obviously that's an aspect of the relationship, so it's going to come through sometimes. But sometimes I think the paintings are misconstrued as erotic when it's just, a naked body, which is obviously a pitfall of, the patriarchy and what we're dealing with. But I try to just ignore it as much as possible, just in the interest of everything else that I'm trying to accomplish with the work. So, some of the paintings are very erotic. And this painting, for example, in the full frontal section of the show, it's complicated because in a way she's inviting you in an erotic way, but she's also the middle finger is a barrier between, the audience and her. But the middle finger also is like kind of a coded eroticism specifically kind of for the gay women, because it's like the finger is the phallus, it's like, and also, she's depicted in this very like gender straddling kind of way. She's wearing tube socks and a button-down shirt, and she's got one hand with nail polish and the other hand with no nail polish, and all these things. So it's not just simply an erotic painting. It's not about like, the vulva. It's like the gesture is meant to sort of push some people away and then be inviting for a very select audience, I would say. So it's like, it's selective eroticism. It's kind of, I think it's kind of off-putting and inviting at the same time, which kind of is the intention. You kind of don't know how you're supposed to feel about it, I think, I hope that's the effect.
Thinking about this, there were images that really turned me on, and I would never paint them because it would ruin it for me.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I was thinking when I did the porn. Mm-hmm. I was trying to be I was really thinking of what was compelling and what was funny.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think nobody's getting off on paintings.
Yeah.
So I don't think we really have to worry about the pornographic aspect of them.
Exactly.
It's not
Nobody
really...
ever gets off on. Well, maybe they did in the 18th century.
Yes, exactly.
Just an exposed boob.
Yeah, origin of the world, actually.
Yeah.
I mean,
But yeah.
So I will ask the next question, but I know already the answer. Do you ever think of ethics or morality or codes in your work or in other people's work?
I mean, for me, it's really important the sort of consensual nature of my relationship to Mackenzie. She's so integral to the paintings. I feel like she should be on this panel talking with us. She's such a big part of how the paintings are made, and they really are collaborative. And I've described before this kind of collaborative musedom because I'm in her work, she's in my work. We have conversations all the time about how we're portrayed and what we think is what we want to put out in the world. And so to me, that's the only thing that I worry about. It's how my subject feels being in the paintings and if she's like an active participant in the way that the work gets made.
Can I say something about porn?
Yes.
Of course.
It's considered so shallow and so contemptible, but it's this giant engine of the culture. Mm-hmm. And it's a billion, there would be no internet without it. And I think that artists should look at it. I mean, why? This is who we are. This is our lives we live. I think all the artists that I'm interested in, all of art history, make a picture of the times they live in. Sure. And it's like so verboten when a young, beautiful girl works with sexuality. And an old lady could do anything. And I just wonder, I wish someone would do a study on what that's about and why is there such fear of women when they're young owning sexual agency. Because I think it's just fascinating. Whereas, as soon as you're postmenopausal, me and Betty could get away with anything. But when I was youngish, I got excoriated.
Yeah, it's definitely a different...
Do you get excoriated?
Sometimes. I think some people are very, they don't know what to think about me, and that's okay.
Is there an artwork in art history that makes you uncomfortable? Not necessarily a painting, it can also be a sculpture.
I think the Damien Hirst shark makes me uncomfortable.
Well, in a sexual way, or?
Not in a sexual way, but there is something that feels sort of pornographic about it, I think, if we're talking about pornography. Not that it's not in a sexual way, like I said, but it's manipulative in that way, I guess.
Well, I can't tolerate any kind of abuse that's depicted. What makes me uncomfortable? What really makes me uncomfortable? Do you know Keith Bodwie's work? I think he's really good. And he makes me uncomfortable. And, I know another one. Tala Mandani. She's filthy. And I love her.
Yeah, I love this one.
Interesting. I would have never said that of Tala. Anything else? What about from older times?
I love Crumb. I love anybody that makes me uncomfortable, really. Mm-hmm. Yeah, unless they're abuse, or any kind of non-sensual abuse.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, there's not a lot that makes me uncomfortable in art. It's very hard at this point to...
That's one thing. I'm a teacher, and you never have anybody say, that offends me. I kind of leave this class.
Yeah.
Not even now?
Never.
Okay.
Never. I'm in a grad school. Anybody would do that in grad school, they'd be ostracized. Because people want to look at something that makes them feel and think. And sometimes that's uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm. I want to switch and talk a little bit about the idea or the category of the muse, because you both look at different subjects for inspiration. Can you, maybe zooming out from your own perspective and thinking in a larger art historical context, how do you think about this concept of the muse, especially also thinking about this exhibition that we're here in today?
Who's
your muse?
I feel like I've kind of already said a lot about the subject, so I'm trying to think of something new that I can bring to this question. Again, it goes back to the idea of empathy for me. Like, I think that's the sort of missing component in a lot of specifically depictions of women throughout the history of specifically painting. where it is just sort of like, I'm in this position, you're in that position, and like, I don't have any responsibility to you as the subject. And I don't actually think about your experience or who you are as a person. Are you even a person? I don't know. So to me, that's what's interesting to like explore and kind of bring into our moment, because I think, we're in a position to understand all of these things from all angles, and now we have women making lots of art, so we get a more complex perspective in terms of that. But
I have certain people I like to work with, but they're usually because they're so unusual looking, or they have some kind of character to their. And I really love to look at freckled people because they're airbrushed all the time. So if you add freckles to a painting or even an ad, it's just somehow unsettling. You don't know why, but it's because the freckles are there. So I was looking for freckled people.
yeah.
And Jenna, do you work alone in the studio? Do you have a big studio assistant?
No, I work
how can you
alone.
describe your practice?
I wish that I could have assistance, honestly. I tried having someone help me in little ways, but I just don't know what to tell them to do. So yeah, and I really value being completely alone. I just feel so at peace in my studio, like deep in myself. And if there's another person in the room, it's hard to get to that place. So yeah, I'm just in there by myself.
Do you work with sketches or photographs? Or
I work with photographs. Yeah, I mean, I keep like many folders of images of Mackenzie and my son, and I kind of sift through them until something like has a little sparkle to it or something. But I do work from photos. Part of what I think I like to think about is the way that the narrative is being kind of distorted by the different forms of mediation. So it's like the paint is mediating the image, the photo is also, and we all have such a like strong relationship to photography these days, you know, like our memories are photo based. We speak in a photographic language now, so that's like really embedded in the work. But even just like the artifice of the pose is being mediated, or the light is another way that distorts the way that we interpret the narrative or something. So so I work from photographs, and that was like a very long, rambling, nonsensical thing.
Do you think of cinema a lot in your work? Or
I do, yeah. And I get really inspired by films. I did a show that was a two-person show with the work of Agnes Varda a couple of years ago. She's very much a hero of mine, and she's someone that I think has been looking at the way that we look at women, and really, she really investigated that as a subject her whole life, and I find her work just sort of endlessly inspiring. But I like film and photography. You know, I find photography really. I mean, not that I don't. I also love painters.
What about you, Marilyn? What is the relationship with cinema?
Oh, cinema, I live for cinema. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I go to a movie a week, and I actually don't like to go. I don't like watching it streaming. And I in the studio practice, I started working with enamel paint, which realistically back in the 90s, and I had to do layers because they're translucent to get what I wanted. So I painted alone by myself for a long time, but it takes so long to build up these layers because I work almost like a Renaissance painter. I have an underpainting that's a different color. And so I build up, like I said, flesh means a lot to me. And so after a while, I wasn't in a hurry because I had a show scheduled and I had 4 paintings. So I hired somebody. I hired a lot of people, but they just kept losing the drawing when they were putting the first layers down. I needed other layers. And so then I hired somebody who, by accident, it was like had to share the studio with him because I was renting his studio. And I said, well, go ahead and try it, because I kept having to redraw everything. And then he was pretty good, and then he got better than me. So between us, we were working together for years, and I had to catch up to him. I had to get as good as he was, and so we would trade paintings back and forth. Otherwise, I could do, like I have a big painting in my show, and it's like 15 by 10 feet. I would still be working on it. So I have underpainters, and I need them desperately. Otherwise, I couldn't do anything. I could maybe do 2 paintings a year or 3. And so but I'm the finisher.
Is there any moment of your painting in which you want to be alone, or are you completely comfortable in being surrounded by assistants or studios?
No, I'm always alone when I make these decisions. When I make the decisions, but I have technical people, because I used to do Photoshop, but I mean, people just wiped the floor with me right after when they got out of grad school. They knew all these different things. I said I gave up. So I tell people what to do. But I'm the one that makes all the decisions. But it's collaborative up until the finishing.
I want to talk a little bit about this wonderful show that we're in and ask you if you have a favorite painting or work in the show. I know this is a hard question. We were just talking about it before. Yeah. Do you have anything that you love?
I told you mine, but I really love the Urs Fischer candle, but I hate that there's a collector in it.
Oops.
I think it would be perfect without the collector. But there's so many to choose from. Yeah, that's mine.
Well, tell us why. Why do you love it?
It's just so
It's the
smart.
candle piece, of course.
It looks like marble, but no.
Such an
It's a way of
amazing
working with
craft.
marble. I just saw the most incredible show. Jenna Gribbon.
Yes, Adia.
Adia, and she works with sand and pigment. It was like another language. I just couldn't believe how good she is. And that's what I felt like when I saw these candles, these marble candles of I wanted to call the show something cheeky.
What about you, Jenna?
I mean, it's a really hard question. I love this Yoko Ono piece a lot. I think it's just hilarious, and also it's just so, I don't know, it's hypnotic. It's I don't know, the De Chirico is amazing. It's really incredible being next to a Degas downstairs. Mm-hmm. I love that relationship, actually, because my painting, I feel like has a little bit of a Degas thing in it, that particular painting, and having them get to live next to each other for a moment is pretty special.
And do you look a lot to art history and other artists? Can you tell us who inspires you, or who do you look at, both in terms of techniques, but also as your idol? Yeah,
I mean, the list is so long, but I can name a few. I would say always Manet, always Agnes Varda, Joan Semmel, Karen Kalimnik, Mary Cassatt. I love Cindy Sherman, Sally Mann. I don't know, just to name a few.
Sally Mann's a great choice for you. Yeah, I like her. I love her too.
What about you, Marilyn?
God, the same thing. List is long. You know, I like. Everyone expects me to love John Curran, which I do, but or you know, Lisa Scavage. I think they're great, Jenna. But I love art that I can't do.
Like abstract paintings?
Yeah, well, my favorite
Agnes
artist,
Martin.
You know, not Agnes Martin as much as Gustin. You know, where there is some hint of, but I mean, there's so many. Joan Mitchell, I die for. You know, I love you and all the people like Mickey. Everybody, you know. I mean, I'm not. If they're in this show, they're great artists. That was the hardest question. Which is your favorite? Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah, and so it's a cacophony of people, and I'll steal from them all.
That's what we do. And I want to continue with you, Marilyn, and ask you to look back and tell us if there was a moment in your career where you felt that things were changing in a good way for women in arts.
I've seen real change.
Okay.
And I think it's really important because I'm old enough to have seen real concrete change. I mean, there was a point, I'm 74, and I remember getting out of grad school, and you never said one woman show, one person show. You said one man show, and if you're a female. Is that hard to believe?
Yeah.
I didn't have a female teacher.
That's a problem.
Never. Yeah. So, this is the biggest change I've seen is, I don't know if any of you read 9th Street Women, with how they were pitted against one another. And even, I read about Daniel Rossetti, and she's one of my muses is Lizzie Siddell, and I sort of used her in some paintings in my show. And what I see now is, I've been watching the guys help each other out and put shows together and put each other in. The boys, they work as a team until they get to the top, then they try and kill each other. And now the women are starting to work together and helping each other. And that, that's brand new.
Do you think it's here to stay? Or
Oh yeah, you'll never put that genie back in the bottle.
And on reverse, what was the most hostile period or moment or event that you remember as being a woman or as a woman?
The worst. For me, I can tell you mine. I think it was Elizabeth Hess wrote about my porn paintings in the Village Voice when the Village Voice was like the New York Times, the Village Voice. There's only a couple of periodicals that did art reviews, and she compared me to my idol and my friend Cindy Sherman. And I was a demon and Cindy was a god. Yeah, that was the worst moment.
What about you, Jenna?
That's a good question.
I guess something I experienced was when I was pregnant and had a child, suddenly and this was 12 years ago, I have a 12-year-old, people acted like I had died or something, and it was kind of like, people would say, like, what do you, I don't know, I would go out to openings or something and mention something about painting, and people would be like, oh, I'm so glad to hear you're still doing it, or something. And it would just be like, what, like, it's not a death sentence to have a child. And so I just felt like and I think that women, especially then, I think things have changed a bit, but then it's like you bring your child to an art opening and you're looked at like you're not a serious artist. Whereas like a man could bring his child to an art opening and people would be like, oh, what a good dad. Isn't that so sweet? Or what a cool artist that he's like in touch with his feminine side or something, But like a woman bringing a child to a professional, scenario like that, you would really be just looked at like you've left the game or something. And I think that was probably the thing that frustrated me the most in terms of like, the experience of being
That's
a
so
woman.
painful.
Yeah.
I thought that was over.
I think it's definitely getting better now. I feel like a lot more artists have children. They're not afraid to have children. I had friends who were pregnant around the same time as me who hid their pregnancies from their galleries and from people for a long time because they were afraid. Oh, and I had dealers say to me that like, collectors would say, oh, I don't collect women who have children because they're a bad investment. Yeah. Like, these things were literally said to me. So I think that, that's something that made me angry.
I thought that was over. Yes.
Like I said, I think it is now getting a bit better. I think it's still, we still have, we can go further.
A long way to go.
Yeah.
I'm going to open it up for questions. We just have one.
Not on purpose, though. That's an accidental muse. I didn't know she was my muse. That's honestly, I mean, I wasn't looking at my dysfunctional childhood at all until I was in my 40s. And I did this whole series of paintings where food was being torn apart with long nails. And one of my assistants said, "That's your mother's hands." Because my mother had these long red fingernails. And I mean, so much of this, it's kind of interesting to me. I always wonder how many artists that you really admire, how many of them come from some kind of dysfunction. They're outsiders somehow. And I think that's really, really interesting and probably true. Although yeah. Somehow they're outsiders, the ones you really admire. Yeah. But they're not vagina paintings.
Okay, please correct me.
No, they're bushes. Yeah, she does the vagina.
There's a difference.
Yeah. And I don't understand why people think they're the same thing. Yeah, I don't understand it. They just automatically, what's a vagina? And it's a bush. I'm trying to make a case for women to keep their pubic hair and not laser it. Because fashions are fleeting.
I'll join that campaign.
Yeah. And your Generation Z is going to save us. You realize that, yeah. And all these young girls were lasering all their fur. And I think, wow, you're going to be a baldy at 80. Not going to look so good. And if you say that, then my campaign is working.
Anyone else? Don't be shy. It's a wonderful opportunity to ask questions to our friends.
Who?
Well, it was an abstract thing by man, so I can't. But have you ever had that experience, or just a piece that you remember being really?
Maybe a movie, but never a painting.
No.
No, but I mean, paint itself is very sexy, for sure. I don't know that I've ever been what I said was not that painting can't turn people on, but it's in general, people are not getting off on painting. I don't think it really goes all the way there for people, but it can certainly be sexy, for sure. I would say looking at a Manet painting, or, Sargent is sexy in kind of a sleazy way. The paint is so, it's so sexy that it's sleazy, I would say, almost. But I love it, kind of. I don't know.
I love Sargent too.
Yeah, it's just so, you cannot look at it and not be amazed. It's like magic. He paints like magic.
But I've never been aroused by art, really, unless it's porn, really.
Yeah, I'm really avoidant when it comes to social media. Sometimes I can deal with it and sometimes I can't. And it's I don't know. It's a lot more, I prefer exploring that in the realm of painting, because when it comes to actually posting things, then I just get anxious. I'm just I don't want to post something because then I have to think about whether or not people like it, or sharing my private life. Sometimes I do it if I only do it if I'm in a really good mental state. Otherwise, I just find I can be derailed or distracted or all of these things. But it's really complicated. But I definitely think about those relationships a lot and put them into the work more than I'm not a person who explores my social media as an art form or something. I know that some people, it's an extension of their work, and it's not really that way for me, but it definitely influences my work a lot in terms of, thinking about just our intimate lives and the way that we share them, and the way that we think what we think we know about other people and their intimate lives.
It was so boring to sit. Not move.
Who painted you?
A teacher when I went to Syracuse University. Portrait painter. I still have it.
Good one?
He was so influenced by Philip Pearlstein. So it's really Pearlstein-esque. But he was good at copying. Is a good second-rate Philip Pearlstein.
Yeah, I've been painted. Duran Langberg painted a portrait of Mackenzie and I. Anthony Cudahy painted me. My friend Karen Lyons, who's back there, painted me like probably almost 20 years ago. Yeah, that was a long time ago. Yeah, I've been in some paintings for sure. Been in a lot of songs.
Expand on that.
Well, Mackenzie is a musician, so yeah. So I'm.
What's your favorite lyric?
Oh, well, that's hard. I would have to think about that. I'll get back to you. I'll text you.
I think about this a lot too. Mm-hmm. You know, and I think nobody says, oh, Jean-Michel Basquiat is a great African-American artist. And that's the goal, isn't it?
He's a great man artist.
Yeah, I was going to say he's a great male artist.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think it goes like that. 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 2 steps forward, 1 step back.
Yeah, that happens. I mean, once you put your work out into the world, you have no control over the way that it's interpreted. And I kind of enjoy that chaotic aspect of it. And I'm curious about how things land when I don't get to, control the narrative. So I try not to get too caught up in what other people think that they're seeing versus what I thought that they would see. But certainly sometimes, I think some subtleties get lost on people, or certain people think that, I don't know, maybe that I'm trying to make a pornographic painting or something when I'm actually trying to do the opposite or something completely different.
We want multiple reads.
Yeah. I welcome that, actually.
I welcome that.
Yeah, and I think
Layers.
And I think it's important. It's so boring if you're just like, this is what this painting is, and it can only be this, and I'm in charge of how you feel about it. Like, I ultimately I just want the viewer to be more aware of their active role in the consumption of the image and the consumption of another person's reality, another person's body.
We want to have a dialogue.
Whatever that experience is, I welcome it. I just want, hopefully, for them to be aware that they're even having an experience.
But you see, you knew about high heel shoes, and you knew about bad weather. Everything I do really is something I feel like you know, but you've never seen an image before. So I thought, well, I'm used to commercially seeing commercial photographers shoot, but putting dirt each little piece of sand with a tweezer, and they couldn't. Nobody could tolerate chaos. And I thought, well. No one can see anything at all unless you push it a little bit. So that's how I'm always thinking. Well, I could pull your socks down and you'll see lines in your leg, but you never saw a painting of that, and so I had to make that. So, but I just make it a little. Okay, it'll be a freckled leg, or a dirty foot in a fancy shoe. But we know both of those things.
Thoughts about commissioned portraits was the... Yeah, she was talking about John Singer Sargent's commissions versus his personal work and how we feel about commissions.
Do you do commissions?
I don't. I used to. it used to be kind of how I made a living for many, many years. In addition to doing my personal work, I would do commissions, and there wasn't something about it that I enjoyed, but I mostly very much disliked it, because it's just, the feeling that I was describing of being in my studio and going so deep inside myself, and just like tuning everyone else out. You can't tune out someone who, when you're painting a commission, because it's all about pleasing them, kind of, right? I don't know.
Well, I only do commissions if they let me do whatever I want.
Yeah, and they would usually be that way, but I would still be like, I don't know, they're not going to like it if I don't make them look good, or something, this kind of thing. It's actually one of the great things about Mackenzie is that she doesn't care if I make her look bad or something, if I show her slouching where her stomach is folding, or show her like at a funny angle, and she has this amazing face that can look like really different from all different angles, and she lets me just like explore her body in this way because she knows like what I'm trying to do, which is to like really convey the experience of seeing a person from all of these different angles. But anyway, when you're doing a commission portrait, there's so much less, it doesn't feel very free, I think.
Anyone else? Otherwise, we can wrap up and congratulate our speakers.